What's going on, everyone? This is Brian Turner here with another episode of the No Stress Midwest podcast. We are joined by Morgan Ruhl, who is an assistant coach and goalkeeper coach at Northwestern University. Morgan, how are you doing this fine day?
I am fantastic. It's a beautiful Monday morning here in Evanston, so no complaints.
I was going to say, I can see the background a bit. It looks like, is that overlooking the stadium?
It is, yeah,
Yeah,
we're pretty ridiculous view and a clear day. You can kind of see the skyline too, so it's never gets old. Never
that's
gets
awesome. That's awesome. So Morgan, I know for college season, right? It's just getting started. I think preseason was like 2 weeks ago, and then like you said you had two games this past, Thursday, and then this weekend, Saturday, preparing for games coming up. So you're kind of like you're in
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's
Um,
blazing. We're in
what's
it.
what's been the last 2 weeks since the start of season? Maybe the week beforehand. How's that been for you as a program and as a coach?
Yeah, it's been awesome. The downside of preseason, not to start with the negative, is you blink and it's over.
Yeah.
You roll right into those exhibition games, and then we started off on the road at K-State and KU, so we immediately were kind of just then into travel and all that stuff and getting rolling. But team has responded well. They came in good to go, so we've just been kind of hitting the ground running and getting stuff loose ends kind of tied up and learning as we go. So
That's
it's
awesome.
always like fast paced and you're like, well, you're like in Jesus take the wheel mode starting the
Right. Here we go.
so
So you've had a few exhibition games. We were talking a little earlier. You got some new keepers in. You primarily work with the goalies. I'm guessing you were a goalie yourself as a player
I was back in the day.
back in the day, huh? Right now, is it just mostly coaching? Do you do any, playing like indoor or anything like co-ed leagues, anything like that?
No, but I should. I feel like I get enough joy at training, just running around in our little training environment. I'm
Yeah.
rather active within that. So that's kind of how I get my fix. But me and my body have
Yeah.
officially transitioned to the coaching side
There
of
we go.
I
You're
don't know
like,
if I can keep up physically anymore, but I wish I
yeah.
would.
Yeah, so I know we were talking when we first had like our initial call. You were saying your C license was coming up. Just recently, I think you said you completed your C license. Are you now a U.S. soccer C license coach, or is the course done and then you're waiting the waiting part?
The course is done. I got
Okay.
my eval and I'm green lighted, but I don't officially have the certificate yet. So I'm like
Ah,
very, very, very close, but still
yeah. So it's
don't
not
have it yet.
official,
It's
official,
not official,
official.
official, but
Yeah,
I
but
feel
it's
good
like
about
official.
it. Yeah, yeah, I feel
That's
good about
awesome.
it. So
How was your experience? Where was it?
it was in Rockford. So the majority of it was online, which would
Okay.
gave me even more insight on what some of our student athletes have had to go through the past
Hmm.
crazy COVID stint of learning virtually, but the majority of it was online, and then we had 4 days in person in Rockford. But yeah, it was amazing. It was cool to get to know people virtually and kind of because we had a lot of different like structured small group stuff that we would do,
Right.
uh, and then getting to like come together. And we were split into two groups that both of our instructors took a group, so kind of everybody getting to meet in person was
Yeah.
awesome.
That's cool. Is the B license next, or are you kind of happy with the C and you want to sit tight for a bit, or what? What's that looking like?
Um, the B license is next.
Okay.
I want to soak up the sea a little bit and grow a little bit with some of the stuff that I learned there. And then I'm competitive and I feel like every time there's a next step, I'm going to want to go for it. So
Yeah.
I told myself during the sea, like, okay, maybe we pump the brakes a little bit after this one. And the second I'm like done and I'm like, okay, so the B license,
So
when
the
is
B
that?
license
Here we
starts. So
go.
I've got a year. I got to wait. Okay,
Oh
but
gosh, I'm so
yeah.
excited with that kind of stuff, but in a good way.
That's good. That's good. So we talked about it just a little bit. You said you used to play back in the day, right? So there was one of our guests brought up this saying. I don't know if it's a saying or just him saying it, right? Depending on what you look at it. And he was like, most players don't have the luxury of retiring when they want. That decision is usually made for them.
Absolutely.
So talk to us. What was that transition like from player to coach? Was it something that like you knew you always wanted to be a coach? Was it, maybe you were injured and you had a sideline view of things? maybe you went off and joined the circus and then was like, "Man, I really love soccer. I want to get back into coaching." How was that transition like?
Well, to clarify, sometimes coaching does feel like you're in a circus because you're juggling 9,000 things. But
Yeah.
um, for me, I in high school and throughout youth soccer, like I would always we grew up like some from Baltimore area, so we had like a Baltimore area goalkeeper group there, and we kind of trained each other a good bit. So I got like a small taste while still being a player there.
Mhm.
But then would work summer camps, would train in them, and then would also train other people within it. So had a little bit of a taste of it. And then within college, I had like a U8 team, which was fantastic. They were like
Yeah.
absolute ankle biters, like
Yeah.
loved that experience. And then worked with some other local club teams throughout that, but never really saw it as like a profession for the
Mhm.
most part, but just loved it because I couldn't get enough of soccer. And then when I was at LSU, I unfortunately was injured like my entire career there.
Yeah.
So that sucked, but I look back on it and that was something that kind of slingshot me into the coaching world. I was DQ'd my junior year, and then our coaching staff, which I'm like incredibly thankful for, asked if I wanted to just remain like within the team environment my senior year as like an undergrad coach. So
Mhm.
for me, I approached that as like I was really grateful for the opportunity to still be within that program, and never still, even though it was like I was in it, I didn't really see it as something that I would move forward with.
Right.
And then graduated, circumstances brought me back up to Baltimore, and our coach who was at LSU went to University of Maryland and then Loyola of Maryland. And he was like, "Hey, we need somebody to train the goalkeepers. Saw you're back in town. Would you want to come in and volunteer?" And at that point, I was in a little bit of like a love-hate relationship with soccer, just because my career didn't end exactly how you were saying.
Right.
Like
Right.
I didn't make that decision. It was kind of thrusted upon me. And that was something that unfortunately was so big into like my identity.
Mhm.
And to have that kind of stripped of me, I wanted to blame soccer and it had nothing to do with that. So I was like, ugh, with it. And then that opportunity of volunteering at Loyola just absolutely reignited just a flame and love for the game. And again, never really saw it as a profession. And then
Right.
was in there as a volunteer. And then that assistant role opened up that following June. And I was fortunate that they asked me to apply for that. So then got in it full time, and we've been hitting the
Moving.
ground, hitting
You've
the
been
ground
moving.
running ever since.
You've
But
been in the circus ever since,
oh,
right?
I've been juggling many of things.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, and I know, like, I mean, I feel like everyone's kind of way into coaching is different, and you have people that have come in right at the U8 grassroots level and kind of worked their way up, going through high school, going through club, going through this or that. You have some people that are able to come into the college world and kind of really see what the NCAA and or NAIA or JUCO, whatever those rules are, kind of see a whole nother side of the game. You have the people that are fortunate enough to come into an academy or a professional environment and kind of work it like that. But I feel like no matter what, all of us, our transition into it is all kind of different, but all kind of like, hey, this is where we were. We didn't really know what we were doing. Now we kind of still don't know what we're doing, but we're just better at not knowing it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So okay, with the first job there at Loyola, like you were working with the keepers. Is this, and you're right now, you're still currently working with keepers. Are you kind of like, do you want to stay on the goalkeeper side, or do you think that maybe being a head coach is something that you want to transition to, or have you not kind of thought that far ahead yet?
Yeah, I feel like when I first started, again, I'd mentioned previously with how I approached like the licensing and stuff. Like when I
Mhm.
first got in it, I feel like everyone was like, "Yeah, you can be a goalkeeper coach, and then you try and move to like a top assistant and then head coach, and like that should be your pathway." And I was like, "Okay, like I want to be like as moving up in the ranks as I can."
Yeah.
I saw that from like, okay, that was sort of the pathway to go. But I feel like if you would have asked me that a year or two into Loyola, I'd be like, "Yeah, I want to be head coach. Like that's what I want to do." Um, I feel like that's shifted a little bit now because I do still want to work with like in like a full team environment and work with outfield players, but I also want to be like the guru of goalkeeping. Like I want
Yeah.
people to come to me, and like I want to be able to like help pass down what I know and be able to collaborate with other people, and like I want to be a hub for goalkeeping, especially with being a female and with female goalkeepers, like, I don't know. So that's kind of, I've shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That may change in a year or two.
Yeah.
But right now I'm like, I want to be like very locked in on the goalkeeper side of stuff. So
Right. Okay. Well, and it's No Stress Midwest has partnered with mobile app DNA Soccer Lab to bring not only our expertise in training for field players to video, but also offering keeper training, sports performance work, strength and conditioning, player development, and mental performance videos to all of our athletes wanting to take their training to the next level. We even have personal development plans that we can create for those trainees. Visit more on our website at nostressmidwest.com/DNA Soccer Lab to read more. I mean, it's different, I'll say, because I was talking to someone I forgot on this podcast, and we were talking about being a manager versus like being a coach, right? Being like the head coach versus not.
yeah,
And there's a lot of things that the head coach has to do or has to deal with that is just like the
yeah,
most annoying and full of headaches that has nothing to do
yes,
really with like the tactics or the upcoming game. Um, and I feel like there's some people that are just like, yo, I can deal with that. I want to deal with it. I want to embrace it. And there's other people that are just like, yeah, get me out of there. I'd much rather just be on the field.
yeah,
Um, and I feel like that kind of transition just comes as we're around head coaches or around assistant coaches, around the game that you want to be in as far as that level and seeing kind of what all it entails to be, number one versus to be on the backside of it.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
Um,
that's definitely a really big piece of it. I think our head coach here does a really good job of kind of doing all of the above. So he's
mhm.
been like a great example, and I feel like watching him operate, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe this is doable.
Yeah.
You also like the role of an assistant that you can be kind of that middleman, for lack of a better term,
Yep.
of communication.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
really embrace that role and value that role. And that's something that I think is a strength of mine. So I'm like, I want to continue to make sure I'm good at that,
Yeah.
and do the best that I can for our team and our program within that capacity. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll check in like a year
We'll
or so
see.
from now.
Yeah.
But
We'll do a podcast follow up. Where are they
yeah,
now?
where are we?
And we'll have like the dramatic music playing, and we'll have you like on the field working, and then we'll
Yeah,
dive into it.
I love it. I love it.
Um, all right, so you started off back in the Maryland area coaching. You're now at Northwestern. How did that opportunity come up? How long have you been there? How's that time been so far?
Yeah, so I was at Loyola I'd like just graduated college so it was like 2016 to 2019, I think was my last season there.
Okay.
Um, for me, I had kind of like set a goal for myself that I wanted to do or be in like a Power 5 conference, hopefully before I was 30.
Hmm.
I wanted that like uber competitive environment, but I also wanted it to like align with a program that I'm and like an opportunity from an education standpoint that like aligned with something I felt good about.
Yeah.
Um, I'd also told myself that when I was potentially like wanting to explore other opportunities that I wouldn't go anywhere north of Maryland. I'm from Maryland and I kind of
Okay.
wanted something to be like a little bit warmer. And then of course
And then
this opportunity checked every
you
single
chose
box. And I was like,
there.
oh no, it's a little chilly up here, but
Just a little.
just a smidge.
Yeah, just a little.
But yeah, it was something that I'd heard about, and the coaching world is like so small.
Hmm.
And that's so had heard about it, had heard that Michael, our head coach, and David, who was the assistant at the time, were like incredible. So the opportunity to be able to work with them, the opportunity to be in an incredible city as well, like Chicago's amazing.
Yeah.
Didn't really know much about it. And then ultimately to work with student athletes that are wanting to be elite in everything, from
Hmm.
an academic and athletic standpoint. Like, I think that's amazing. When I was at Loyola is also super high academic as well. So that got kind of like a first glimpse of the type of student athlete that you're working with,
Yeah.
the type of opportunity from a recruiting standpoint that you can provide student athletes. So being able to check those boxes here and being able to get close to that goal that I had set for myself was like, okay, let me see if I can
Can do
if I
this.
can do this.
Yeah.
And I was incredibly thankful for the opportunity. It's been amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Was the office and view a selling point, or was that just a sprinkles over the top?
Hey, that was like sprinkles on top of the icing on top of like
Yeah.
cupcake. Yeah, no, that was awesome. And I remember vividly, because like I said, it checked absolutely every box and some.
Hmm.
I remember like vividly walking through, we have like an indoor field here, and I was talking with the other assistant like during my interview, and I was like, so how often do we like when it gets cold, would you say that we like train in here?
Yeah.
Oh, all the time. And I was
Asking
like,
for a friend.
okay. I was like, I can do this. I
All
can do
right,
this.
right. Yeah,
I
it
was like,
makes a
you
big
got this.
difference.
Yeah.
That
And
makes a
the
big
summers in
difference.
Chicago are amazing. And I'm like, okay, I can do
Yeah.
this. I can do this.
And
So
how long have you been there?
uh 2.5 years. So
Okay, so
yeah, I
this is
got
going into the second fall season
second fall because the first one got canceled
because
or
of COVID.
the spring. Yeah. So
Right.
I got
Okay.
here like right before COVID. I was with our
So
team for like 2 weeks and then everything like broke
shut
loose. So
down. Dang.
yeah.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Like that was kind of like a long time ago, but kind of not. But then it's also like I feel like a point in life where it's like pre-COVID,
Literally.
post-COVID,
Yes.
like, oh man, I haven't seen them since before COVID. And it's like,
Like wow.
wow, you went through a whole like, national pandemic and didn't speak to someone.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. So, all right. So you're still fairly new, fairly young in the coaching world, right?
Right.
What is some advice that you either had been given as a young coach, or what's some advice you maybe wish that you had been given as a young coach?
Yeah. Some of or two of like the big ones. One would be so Kevin Dempsey was our assistant at LSU and then Maryland and then Loyola Maryland. So he's like, and he was one of the main people that recruited me. So he is like my absolute top 10, not even
Mm,
top 5 favorite humans I've ever met in my whole life. Um, his advice, like right off the bat, was like just coach as much as you can. Like
yeah.
even if you're in the college environment, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, it's so much," and like no matter where you're working, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, it's a lot to
It's
balance." And blah.
right, right.
Like, never say no to anything,
Hmm.
like, especially early on. So I took that and like started to work with a bunch of different like local Baltimore clubs, and how that sharpened my ability to like coach like developmental age
Hmm.
was like I think super impactful on my career and like just my ability to one you're dealing with so many different skill levels and approaches and like commitment levels at that point. Like for some people soccer's their whole world at age 10
Yeah.
11 and 12, and some people are like, well, I play this, I do dance, I do basketball. So being able to manage that and communicate the best way that fits them, I thought was something that really helped me just through that process. And then so Mike Marciano was on our men's side at
Hmm.
he's also like a genius, like an absolute genius. When I started my US soccer licensing as well, he was working on his A and he was like, he's like, we understand they have to have standardized language and they want to have like a product that they put out that they can make sure across the board is the same. But he's like, don't lose yourself
Yeah.
and don't lose like your identity within that. And he's like, and that's for that whole process, but that's also just like in general, like you're so much of the time told to fit into certain, like what is a coach, and it's this and it's cookie cutter, and like so much of you as a coach has to be authentic to who you are
Yep.
as a human and your values within that.
Yep.
So that was something, and I don't even think he anticipated it to be as impactful as it was, because I kind of like he was just talking about the licensing and I was like
Right.
coaching, like I just like applied it to everything, and I was like, that's pretty big. So those would be the two that I would say are
Okay. I think those are, I mean, that's two bits of great advice.
yeah.
Um, working with US Soccer part-time and within their coaching education, right? And understanding like, hey, there is language that they're going to use.
Yeah.
And I've got some buddies that like came into the B course right away that were playing pro or had played pro. And they're like, yeah, I get to come into the B. I'm, almost at the top. And although that is true, there was so much that they just did not know from the C, from the D, from grassroots as far as that language, what it's how do they picture a session going? What's the verbiage they're using?
Yeah.
So many things that I feel like you pick up on that path up to your potential A, or if you take the step to your pro. Um, a lot of things that you kind of like just learn. And like the learning center, creating like those freaking training sessions in there, like that's an art in its own, is
Yes,
knowing how to do that and
yes.
saving it after you blink, because we've all
Every
had there, it gets
yes,
deleted and wiped out, and you're
yes.
just
Saving
like,
progress, saving
yeah,
progress,
yep,
saving
yep,
progress.
yep, yep. No, for sure. So, okay. What are some of like your favorite moments as a coach? And we can start back to the LSU undergrad coaching days, um, up to now, right? And it doesn't have to be necessarily, oh, we won this game or a conference title, although those are usually pretty big ones. But I feel like a lot of the time, especially looking back on my playing experience, the most memorable things were non-field like stuff. It was like what happened on the bus ride there, what happened in the locker room, what happened at training when coach tripped over the ball bag and like broke his hand. You know, those are the things that like I feel stick with you the most.
Yeah. Um,
Teachers, we want you. Are you a licensed teacher in the Missouri or Kansas KC metro area looking to make a couple extra dollars tutoring over the weekday and weekends? Well, No Stress Midwest is the place for you. No Stress Midwest Education is looking for teachers to help in one on one tutoring, small group academic enrichment, and study hall. We are looking for teachers to work on average 2 to 3 nights a week, 2 hours a night, in the subject of language arts, science, math, social studies, and foreign language. If you're interested, please visit nostressmidwest.com/education and fill out an application today. Cheers.
I would say, so big one when I was at Loyola, would be we finally made it into the Patriot League tournament, and
Okay.
that was something that we felt like that's the platform that we should be on as a program, as like a where we are in regards to like a hotbed of club soccer. Like we should be getting the best kids in the DMV area there, and we had, from a recruiting standpoint, like really invested in that, and worked our butts off to get that in. We had really strong leadership that year, which is something that we had done our absolute best to try and cultivate. And we had people who just absolutely stepped up and took it and ran with it. So you have the angle of the behind the scenes stuff coming in. You have the people who are there leading on and off the field then. And then we had a huge just commitment and buy-in from the whole group and staff and everybody kind of associated around us. And that was one of the first times I felt like we really had that like sweet spot of everything. And then we're like, okay, now we have to do it, which is always
Right.
like you can have everything aligned and then being able to actually
Right.
push forward and do it. So made it into the tournament. We got a home game in the first
There we
round,
go.
goes into overtime, this whole shebang, and then one of our players ends up just hitting this absolute banger in
Yeah.
overtime. We like lose it, and everybody like the
Yeah.
bench is hugging, we're tackling, the staff is tackling each
Yeah.
other. Like it was one of those moments, like, and I feel like as I look, like I know you'd like sent these questions before, and I was kind of like looking through some of them, and I was like, I don't feel like I have like a big moment. And I was like, that for so many reasons was a big one. But then
Mhm.
afterwards, they always had this tradition of the team after every win would play like some song in the locker room, and they would just like go
Yep.
crazy. And there's a lot of expletives within it, but whatever. I won't tell you the song, but they would go crazy. And
Yeah.
we won that game, and they were like, staff, like come in here. And like that was just again like such a big moment for everybody to experience that. But yeah, that was awesome. And then I feel like anytime we have, and this is like a more like common one, but anytime you
Mhm.
have a player that like trusts you with personal information or
Yeah.
like struggling or a high and a low throughout their day, like those are moments all the time that I like cherish, because that's
Yeah.
like why I'm in the
You're
college game.
coaching. Yep.
I,
Yep.
I love those moments. So I was like, those are the ones that I'm like, oh, they came to me about that. I'm like, I hope I helped. Like, I hope I would, like, I love that they felt comfortable and trusted me with that.
That
So
information.
those are moments that, like you're in there and you're like,
Right.
yes, like let's talk through it and
Right. But then
and
inside
afterwards,
you're just like, yes, oh my God, they spoke to me. God, I knew they liked me. I told them they were gonna like me. Yeah.
yeah. But it was just a cool like that you have that trust and that bond, and that it's so much bigger than whatever you could ever dream about doing on a field. Yes,
Mhm.
those moments are matter. And yes, I'm competitive as all get out, and our staff is competitive as I would argue anybody.
Yeah,
But those are the moments that you're like, this is why we do what we do.
right.
Just have any form of impact and trust, and like just throughout the process is something that I really, really value. So
For
yeah.
sure.
I
No,
know.
I had my high school coach on as one of the guests,
Yeah.
and I look back at like high school soccer, right? And obviously there's a lot of memories, but I told him like probably one of the most vivid ones that always comes out was our senior year. We won a conference title and we started off really bad. So like I didn't think we were gonna do it. I don't think he did either. And he makes this bet with us, was like, if we win, I'll sing whatever song that you want in
Oh,
the locker room and you can record it. Now, like at the time, only half the team had like cameras on their phone. We were in the transition period of camera
yeah.
phones during that time. But I had one, and it was the very first video I posted on YouTube. Like, I mean, it's so grainy, and he was singing "Build Me Up, Buttercup," and
I was
like
about to
I
what was the
mean,
song?
I just like keep playing that back. He didn't know the words. We were like booing him, but then like when the chorus came in, like I mean,
Everyone.
we're cheering in. We've got like water bottles just like
Yeah.
splashing around.
I love.
And it's like those are like the moments where I'm just like, this is like what this is about. The team environment, the doing something together as
Yeah.
like a collective whole, right? Going through the ins and outs of trainings, the ups and downs, the injuries, the
Yeah.
fights, all that stuff. Um, so yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
I've had some people come to me with some personal things, which, like you said, that's always huge. And I feel like that as a coach, like that's just like a person to person connection, right? Where it's like, hey, I trust this person with this. There's some times where I'm like, dang, I really wish you wouldn't have told me this because I
Yeah.
don't need to,
Yeah.
I don't need to have that on
Yeah.
on
You
my
got to set the
mental
boundaries.
right now. Yeah,
You got to set the boundaries. Oh yeah. But no, I think it's important for. I mean, mental health has obviously always been a big topic, but
yeah,
like now more than ever. And for us to expect them to be on day in and day out is just unrealistic,
hmm
in my opinion. So getting a glimpse of them being like, oh, I'm having a really good day, or even if it's like, I have two massive exams this week and I'm stressed, like us knowing those things and understanding that we don't necessarily tiptoe around them in training, but
yeah.
we're aware that that's on their shoulders right now. So
For sure, for sure. And then how you go about it and the staff is how you go about it, but you have more information that you know about the situation.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And good and bad days too. So it's
right.
helping them stay as steady as possible, but no expectation of like, okay, you could be having like the worst day and you're going to be like, ha, like, do you have standards within our program? Absolutely. Are you going to be expected to meet them? Absolutely. But do you understand that it might be a little bit of a extra strain today? Yes.
For
And I
sure,
think
right.
that's super important.
Agree, agree. And I definitely think that's more of like new age. I hate saying that because, like, it makes you sound like there's an old age, but
Yeah.
there kind of was, in the sense of just coaching, and it was like, what I say goes, and we're just gonna yell at you, and I'm gonna, for some reason, if I tell you you suck, like on the 10th time, that's gonna be the trigger that you're gonna be the best
Magic.
player. Like you're like, oh man, coach thinks I suck. Let me get better.
Yeah.
I definitely think that that's kind of changing, and I think it's good that as coaches now we can see that, right, and understand that the youth athlete here in the college world, even in the professional world, even at the high school or club level, right, they're going through stuff. They're
Mhm.
going through relationships, they're going through family things, they're going through school, they're going through, it being a Tuesday, right? And they just
Yeah.
hate Tuesdays for whatever reason. The car broke down and like that stuff affects all of us. So I think it's kind of unfair that we have to look at kids or players, depending on the level, and like, hey, you can't let this stuff affect you. You got
Yeah.
to always be on. But it affects us from coaching,
Yeah.
right? Like, that stuff goes through our head. But luckily, we don't have to like run and have a good first touch now. We can just hold the piece of paper and just instruct.
Absolutely.
So, from the first few years, let's say at Loyola to now, how do you think that you've grown as a coach? Do you
Mhm.
think that there were, maybe some young moments where it was, very vocal or, yelling or whatever, versus now you're kind of like, hey, maybe I can look back and realize I don't have to tell you you suck. Like what are some benchmarks that you've seen as a coach? Have you heard the big news? No Stress Midwest has found a new home at the soccer lot located downtown Kansas City. Swing by and check out our new training facility as well as our classroom. We'll be hosting our tutoring sessions. Be sure to also check out our player lounge, which includes a TV, FIFA, ping pong, and a tech ball table for all of the needs of our trainees.
Uh, One from like a management standpoint, I mentioned like the piece about being authentic before. When I first started, like I just turned 22 before our first preseason. So I was really, really close in age to a lot of the people that I was coaching. So that
Yeah.
was difficult to kind of manage because I was like, I felt like there had to be two versions of me. There
Hmm.
had to be like coach me that was stoic and obviously professional no matter what, but
Right.
I had to fit into this certain box.
Just coach what a coach is, right? I have to fit
Yeah,
into that
yeah.
little cookie
And I
cutter
could go
thing.
on also a small tangent, which I will save you because I know we're limited on time about being a female coach within that in the box that you're very much so told to operate in.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt like I had to be that. And then my actual personal self was a completely different person. Like I didn't really let those two interact. And I like now I'm very much so the same person. Like I'm professional across the board, but
Yeah.
I'm goofy. I can show up to training and be like, did not have coffee this morning. Kind of a hot mess. We're gonna get rolling and we're gonna make the best of it. And we're gonna learn
Right.
something new today. Like, and there's days where I'm like, I'm just me within our environment. And that's something that I look back on and I'm like, why? Like, because I feel like in the process of being me, I've had times where I've reflected and been like, okay, I like how I did this. I would do that differently. There's times where I absolutely fall on my face and I'm like, I still did it in a way that I was operating on my values or like trying to be as authentic to me, but like maybe because I'm a super passionate person, I'm like, maybe I popped off a little bit too much
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Maybe I reel it in some. So, but I'm like, I now can know that I'm doing it in a way that's authentic to me. So then I can reflect and sharpen that ability to communicate and lead and inspire. Instead of having to be two different people and try and do it. Like, and I feel like I wasted years of being able to refine how I show
Who
up
you
daily
are. Yeah.
because I've tried to separate it so much. So
Yeah.
from a management standpoint, that's a big one. And then from a goalkeeper standpoint, like I'll look at some of my early sessions and I'm like, oh my God.
What was
Um,
I doing?
what like they weren't like bad, but they were so like I was always a very technical player, and that was something
Yeah.
um I prided myself on being like incredibly technical and sharp and as efficient as possible. And that did really help working with some youth teams as well, being able to develop that and
Teach
teach
them.
that. But
Yeah.
there's so many pieces, especially working with like the level of athletes that we have here, that they're pretty technically good, and very much so not good, above average in that regard. And it's just some different sharpening that is usually like
Hmm.
a spring task. But I'm like, how can we put them in a space where there's as much decision making as possible, both in and out of possession? So the way that my sessions have progressed, I'm like, and obviously so much room to grow, but I'm like, good Lord,
Yeah.
um, what in the world? I feel like goalkeeping in general and like goalkeeper environments have shifted kind of probably along the same pathway that I was picking up on stuff and within my own realm. So I'll cut myself a little bit of slack there, but I look back, I'm like, oh my
It's
God,
rough. Yeah. Well,
so
and
many
I'm
cones, like so many cones and stuff. I'm like, oh Jesus.
well, and I think of like the times when I was first coaching where I was coming up with sessions on the way to training,
Mm.
and I'm just like, man, I was really just coming up with this stuff on the fly. Or like before I started the licenses, like just doing random things to like work on like this or that and this and
Yeah.
that versus like now I'm like, okay, hey, what's the theme that I want to accomplish
How do
today?
we
How
progress?
does every yeah, how do we progress to it? How does every phase get us better, right? And like I think you touched on it, just like being an authentic coach.
Mm.
And I think that's a lot of like being an authentic person.
Yeah.
Like, like I feel like as kids, it's like we have to be popular, we have to be cool. So it's like we try to act like what's popular, what's
Yeah.
cool. And then at whatever point in your life, you're just like, man, I'm like pretty cool. I
You're like,
think I
I like myself.
yeah, like I think I like who I am. And I feel like when you see people be their true, authentic, 100% self,
Yeah.
I feel like that's when you can get the most like engagement, and that's when people can really gravitate. Like, oh man, look, this guy doesn't care. He shows up in flip flops and it's raining every day, right?
Yeah.
Like he
Rolling.
doesn't, yeah,
Yeah.
like he's just doing it, and I feel like those are things as a coach for sure players pick up on.
Mm.
But then as a person, right, we talk about like off the field, when you don't have to code switch and you can just like be your same person while you're running a session versus when you're in the office versus when you're at home with your friends, right? Like, granted, you're probably not talking about formations when you're at the bar, but you can still be, yeah, maybe, right? That happens. But you can be yourself the whole time. And it's like you're just, like you said, really refining you and
Yeah.
like what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with, what my weaknesses are, what my strengths are,
For sure.
all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. And especially like for some of our players, like I'm the first female coach that they've ever had.
And
So
representation matters.
it very much so matters. And I'm like, if I'm gonna play a small part in like their soccer journey, like I'm gonna do it in my way and
Yep.
like try and help them in every possible realm. But like I want them to see me being authentic and before it wasn't necessarily like when I was on the field, I was one person. When I was off, I was different. It was just whenever I was around them, I
Yeah.
was coach
When
and I
you
was
were
like
coach
the whole time.
versus when you
Yeah.
weren't coach.
When I
Yeah.
was home, it was different. So now I'm like,
The
I'm
same.
gonna be me. Yeah, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be fiery. I'm gonna be passionate. I'm gonna absolutely get so much joy out of the environment.
Yeah.
And hopefully they see that and they're like, oh, it's cool to be a female that's like incredibly competitive and like she feels comfortable with being incredibly
That's
competitive
okay.
and
Yep.
fiery. And then if I shank a ball, I'm like, oh my God.
All
Like
right. Wolf,
that was shocking.
yeah.
Like next one, like
Hey, I remember my first time, like those things.
I'm like, I wanna I owe that to them to do that. Um,
hmm
which then kind of in turns validates it for me, like even more to be like, just keep going. Like
Yep.
keep this is how you should be doing it. So no, I
I
feel good
love
about
it.
that
I
for
love
sure.
it. Well, and I feel like I am pretty similar, but if I am out at the bar and I hear the word coach, like I'm just like, crap, who is this? Who is
Like
this?
what?
Um, but
No.
yeah, no. So Morgan, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, is there any final things you'd like to leave us with? Any tidbits? Any fun facts? Right, we didn't open with a fun fact. I know people hate those. Um, Anything you want to leave us and the listeners with before we wrap up?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm gonna
Um,
put you on the spot there.
yeah. I mean, joy is one of our team values. It's one of my personal values as well. I feel like as much as I can advocate for people doing things that bring them joy, like authentic joy,
hmm
is going to be how you find your purpose in life. And I think that's incredibly valuable. That's incredibly important just as a human, and
Yeah,
especially humans that unfortunately we do have to work. Um, but being in environments where you can truly feel fulfilled by them is a blessing, but you can also choose that mindset of how you view your setting. So it can be a blessing no matter if you're where you want to be or on a pathway to go where you want to be going.
yeah,
Seeking joy every single day, I think, is super impactful. And on top of that, finding joy in just making other people feel confident and valued,
yeah.
uh, I think is one of the best things that we can do as a human on this earth. So that's kind of my spiel. That's how
That's
I
it, man.
operate my
That
life.
was
So
deep right there.
yeah,
I
man.
like it. I
What is
like
it,
it.
Monday? Well, I was like, what day is it?
I
Monday?
know
Oh, we're
Monday
starting on
before
Monday.
noon. Before noon. Look at you dropping some gems.
Oh,
You're holding
I've
on to
had
that
coffee.
one.
I've
You
had
said I
coffee.
had coffee.
Yeah, but this is my little coaster in my office. So
Love it.
it's in the forefront of my mind. So that's why I felt
I
like I would
lo-
go with that today.
I love it.
Awesome.
Well, Morgan, I want to thank you so much for being a guest. I'm glad we were able to finally get this locked down, knock it out. I
Yeah.
thought it went really well. So thank you for being a guest. To our listeners, hopefully you were able to take one or two things away from our chat with Morgan. If anything, just fast forward to this very last part when she drops the gem on Joy, and then you can rewind and then watch everything before that because I thought that was really good. So
Thank you.
Morgan, thank you.
Thank
Good luck this season. I'll be following along, and
you.
cheers. Thank you, listeners. We'll listen or we'll chat with you at the next session.